This 4-year-old beggar girl is harassed leaving school, but a millionaire saw everything and did something that shocked everyone. Watch until the end. You won't regret it. Comment on what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The dull thud of the small body hitting the concrete echoed through the quiet morning in Willow Creek, a small town in upstate New York where everyone knew everyone. Elson's secrets rarely stayed hidden for long. Maisie Sanders, just 4 years old, tried to hold back tears as she looked at her scraped knee, bleeding through the tear in her only faded yellow sundress. "You can't stay here, kid. I've told you 1,000 times, street kids don't belong." "In this school," yelled Earl, the security guard at Willow Creek Elementary, a tall, lanky 52-year-old who had worked there for 3 years and never demonstrated patience with unusual situations. Maisie wiped her nose with the back of her dirty hand and slowly got up, feeling the pain radiate through her knee. It was the 5th time that month she had tried to sneak into Mrs. Davison's classroom to listen to the math and English lessons. She loved hearing the stories the teacher told and could memorize every word, every number she saw on the blackboard. "Please, Mr. Earl, I won't bother anyone. I just want to learn my letters," she mumbled in her thin voice, but the man had already turned his back and was walking back to the entrance booth. Across the street, in the back seat of his black Cadillac Escalade, Theodore Teddy Thornton watched the scene with a mixture of shock and indignation. At 62, the entrepreneur who owned the Thornton furniture chain had grown accustomed to seeing the world through the tinted windows of his cars, maintaining a safe distance from the adversities he had preferred to ignore since losing his wife Carol in an accident 5 years earlier. "Stop the car, Walter," he ordered the driver, his voice carrying the authority he had built over decades of running businesses. Walter Peterson, 45, frowned. In 15 years of working for Teddy, he rarely saw him make impulsive decisions. "Sir, we have a meeting with the suppliers in 20 minutes. Stop the car now," Teddy repeated, already opening the door before the vehicle came to a complete stop. Maisie was sitting on the sidewalk, trying to wipe the blood from her knee with the hem of her dress when a shadow covered the morning sun. She raised her big brown eyes to find a tall, gray-haired man in impeccable clothes, watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "You're hurt," said Teddy, crouching down to be at the girl's level. He noticed that despite the dirt and worn clothes, there was something special in that child's eyes, an intelligence that shone through the sadness. "It's nothing, mister. It's okay," Maisie replied, trying to stand up, but wincing when the movement pulled the injured skin. Teddy took a clean handkerchief from his suit pocket and gently cleaned the wound. "What's your name?" Maisie Sanders." "And where are your parents, Maisie?" The girl lowered her eyes. "I don't have parents. I live behind Joe's bakery." She pointed to a narrow alley between 2 old buildings. Teddy's heart clenched. "And what were you doing at school?" "I wanted to learn to read good. I already know a little, but I wanted to know more. Mrs. Davison is really good. She lets me listen sometimes when Mr. Earl doesn't see." Teddy was impressed with the clarity of the girl's speech. "How old are you?" "4 years old. I can count to 100 and I can do addition and subtraction," said Maisie with shy pride. "Really? Can you show me?" Maisie picked up a twig and began to draw numbers in the dirt. 10 plus 15 is 25. 20 minus 8 is 12. Her answers came quickly, without hesitation. Teddy felt something stir in his heart, hardened by years of loneliness. "Maisie, would you like to have a real breakfast, with warm bread and milk?" The girl's eyes lit up, but quickly a shadow of distrust crossed them. "Mom always told me not to go with strangers." "Your mom was a wise woman. But what if we go to Joe's bakery? Do you know me from there?" Maisie thought for a moment. "You're the man with the nice cars who buys donuts in the morning. Joe always says you're a good guy." Teddy smiled for the first time in months. "Then let's go As they walked down the cobblestone street, Teddy watched as Maisie greeted several people. Despite living on the streets, she had clearly won the sympathy of many residents. Joe Oliveira's bakery, a plump 60-year-old who knew the entire neighborhood, was only 2 blocks from the school. "Mr. Thornton, what a surprise to see you walking," said Joe, wiping his hands on his flour-covered apron. "And with little Maisie. Joe, can you prepare a special breakfast for the girl? And tell me, how long has she been living back there?" The baker lowered his voice. "About 8 months, sir. Showed up here one rainy night, all wet. Doesn't have anyone in the world, poor thing. I let her sleep in the storage room when it's very cold, and I always set aside some leftover bread." Maisie devoured the bread with butter and drank the warm milk as if she hadn't eaten in days. Teddy watched every movement, every expression of genuine gratitude she showed. "Maisie, tell me more about yourself. Have you always lived here in town?" "I don't remember very well. I just remember Mom singing me a song before going to sleep. She said I was very smart and that one day I would study in a real school." The girl's words hit Teddy like a punch in the stomach. Carol always said the same thing about the children they never had, that one day they would raise a child and see them grow up studying and becoming someone in life. "And would you like to study in a real school?" "More than anything in the world," Maisie replied, her eyes shining with a hope that made Teddy's heart race. At that moment, sitting in Joe's simple bakery, watching a 4-year-old girl eat with the appetite of someone who knows hunger, Teddy Thornton made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. He didn't yet know the obstacles he would face, nor the dark secrets he would discover about Maisie's past, but he knew he couldn't simply get back into his car and pretend that extraordinary child didn't exist. 2 weeks had passed since their first meeting at the bakery, and Teddy had transformed one of the empty rooms in his main store into a small study space for Maisie. The girl arrived every morning at 8 o'clock, always punctual, carrying a used notebook that Teddy had bought, and wearing new clothes that still seemed too big on her skinny little body. "Good morning, Mr. Thornton," Maisie greeted with a smile that lit up the entire room. The transformation was remarkable. Her brown hair now shone clean and combed, and her cheeks had gained a healthy rosy hue. "Good morning, little one. Ready for another day of studies?" Maisie nodded enthusiastically. Teddy had hired Helen Rodriguez, a 65-year-old retired teacher, to tutor the girl. What they discovered in the first few days left both adults impressed. "Teddy, I need to talk to you," said Helen one Thursday morning after Maisie went out for a snack break. "This child has an exceptional learning capacity. In 2 weeks, she already masters concepts that children her age take months to understand." "What do you mean?" "She memorizes entire stories after hearing them only once, solves complex math problems mentally, and look at this." Helen showed a detailed drawing that Maisie had made. "She perfectly reproduced a map of the United States that I showed her yesterday, including all the states and their capitals." Teddy observed the paper with growing admiration and concern. "Is this normal?" "It's not common, but it's not impossible either. Some children develop compensatory skills when they experience trauma. It's as if the brain finds ways to protect itself through knowledge." That afternoon, Teddy decided it was time to take official action. He went to the register office, determined to get the documents needed to enroll Maisie in the municipal school. What he didn't expect was to find Oswald Peterson, a 48-year-old employee known for his unwillingness and lengthy procedures. "You want to register a child who isn't your daughter?" asked Oswald, adjusting his thick glasses as he analyzed the papers Teddy had brought. "That's complicated, Mr. Thornton, very complicated." "Complicated how?" "First, you need to prove that the child has no family. Then you need to go through a psychological evaluation. You have to have approval from the Child Protective Services. There are many steps, a lot of bureaucracy." Teddy felt the frustration grow. And how long does it take? Oswald gave a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It depends. It could be 6 months, it could be 2 years. But, he paused significantly. For people who understand how things work, sometimes it's possible to speed up the process. What are you suggesting? Nothing too much. A contribution to expedite the procedures. Let's say $5,000 to start. Teddy clenched his fists. He recognized blackmail when he heard it. And if I pay, how long would it take? About 3 months. Maybe less. Reluctantly, Teddy agreed. Not for the money. $5,000 was insignificant to him. But for the need to give Maisie a better future as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, in his mansion on the outskirts of town, Marcel Thornton, Teddy's younger brother, discussed the situation with his wife Violet in a conversation that was becoming increasingly tense. "Did you see how much he spent last month?" questioned Violet, a 53-year-old woman with platinum blonde hair and always impeccable nails. Clothes, school supplies, private teacher, doctor, dentist, all for a girl who isn't even family. Marcel, 59 and a minority partner in the furniture company, shook his head worriedly. Teddy hasn't been the same since he lost Carol. But this is going too far. He's spending our inheritance on this child, Violet exploded. What if she manages to infiltrate the family? What if he decides to adopt her officially? Calm down, Violet. Teddy is too smart for that. Smart? He's acting like a sentimental old man. Someone needs to open his eyes before it's too late. The next morning, Marcel showed up at the main store unannounced, finding Teddy supervising a Portuguese lesson between Maisie and Helen. "Teddy, we need to talk. Alone." "Hi, Uncle Marcel," Maisie greeted cheerfully. She had met the man the week before, and with her childlike innocence, didn't notice the tension in the air. "Hi, kid," Marcel replied with a forced smile. The two brothers went to Teddy's office. Marcel closed the door and went straight to the point. "What exactly are you doing?" I'm helping a child in need," Teddy replied, sitting behind the mahogany desk he had used for 20 years. "Helping? Teddy, you're spending a fortune on this girl. Brand-name clothes, private teacher, expensive doctors, for a street kid you don't even know." "I know enough. She's special, Marcel. Smart as I've never seen." "Listen, I understand that you miss Carol, that you need to fill a void, but that's not how you do it. There are proper ways to help needy children." Teddy felt the anger rise. Proper ways? Like making an anonymous donation and pretending the problem doesn't exist. Like not getting emotionally involved to the point of losing your mind. The discussion was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Maisie peeked through the crack with a worried expression. "Mr. Thornton, are you fighting because of me?" The innocent question left both men speechless. Teddy got up and knelt down to the girl's level. "No, little one, just a business conversation. You should be studying with Mrs. Rodriguez. She went to get some books in the car. Can I stay here with you?" Marcel observed the interaction between his brother and the child, noting how Teddy's face softened when he spoke to her. It was true that there was something special about the girl. Her way of speaking, her intelligent gaze, her natural education despite the circumstances. But that only increased his worries. That afternoon, after Maisie returned to her shelter, behind the bakery, Teddy received an unexpected call. "Mr. Thornton, this is Zilda Martins from the street where you have the store. I need to talk about this situation with the girl." Zilda Martins, a 60-year-old woman known for knowing everyone's lives in the neighborhood, had observed Maisie's routine with growing curiosity. "What situation, Mrs. Martins?" "This girl who stays in your store every day. People are talking, you know. A man your age, a widower, spending so much money on a street child. It doesn't look good." Teddy felt the blood boil. "And what exactly are people saying?" "Well, you know how people are. They start imagining things. They say it's not normal for a man to be so interested in a child who isn't family. Mrs. Martins, I'm going to be very clear with you. I'm helping a child in need, and what people think doesn't interest me. I'm just warning you, Teddy. Be careful not to become a police matter. The veiled threat left Teddy disturbed. He knew that in small towns, rumors could destroy reputations and complicate situations that were already difficult. That night, for the first time since meeting Maisie, he questioned whether he was doing the right thing. The next day, he arrived at the store earlier than usual and found a surprise. Maisie was sitting at the door, crying softly. "Maisie, what happened? Why are you crying?" "Joe said I can't sleep in the bakery anymore. He said people are talking bad about him for letting me stay there." Teddy's heart broke. The rumors were already affecting the people who helped Maisie. "Where did you sleep last night?" "In the park, but it was very cold and scary." In that moment, watching the red eyes and pale face of the girl who had become so important to him, Teddy understood that the obstacles he would face would be much greater than he had imagined, and that some battles would require sacrifices he couldn't even begin to comprehend. 3 months had passed since Teddy had settled Maisie into a small, furnished apartment above one of his stores, away from the curious glances and poisonous tongues of the neighborhood. The girl had blossomed in that safe environment, but Teddy noticed that she sometimes woke up screaming in the middle of the night, calling for someone named Mama Rose. "Who is Mama Rose, little one?" he asked one morning after yet another nightmare episode. Maisie furrowed her little brow, concentrating. "To remember, I don't know." "Exactly. She took care of me before. There was a place with lots of kids, and she always sang to me to go to sleep." Teddy felt a pang in his chest. For the first time, Maisie was mentioning specific memories of her past. He decided it was time to investigate more deeply. That afternoon, he drove to the old neighborhood where St. Vincent's orphanage used to be, which had closed 3 years before. The buildings were in ruins, with broken windows and weeds growing in the abandoned courtyards. But his research led him to Sister Constance, who now lived at the St. Teresa retirement home on the outskirts of town. The 82-year-old nun was sitting in a wheelchair in the garden when Teddy arrived. Her eyes, despite her advanced age, still shone with an intermittent lucidity that surprised him. "Sister Constance, my name is Teddy Thornton. I came to ask about a child who may have passed through St. Vincent's orphanage." "St. Vincent's," murmured the elderly woman, her voice tremulous but clear. "Place of so much suffering. So much suffering. The child's name is Maisie. She has brown hair, big eyes, very intelligent for her age." The nun's eyes lit up suddenly. "Maisie, the girl with the birds." "Birds?" "She drew birds everywhere. On the walls, on the floor, in the notebooks. She said that one day she would fly away from there." Sister Constance grabbed Teddy's arm with surprising strength. "Where is she? Is she safe?" "She's with me. I'm taking care of her." Tears began to stream down the nun's wrinkled face. "Thank God. I feared that after Rosalie took her away." "Rosalie?" "Rosalie Fisher. She was an employee of the orphanage. A good woman, pure heart. When she discovered what was happening to the children, she saved some. She took them away before it was too late." Teddy's heart raced. What was happening? Sister Constance looked around nervously, as if still afraid of being overheard. Neglect, mistreatment. The children went hungry, were punished for any reason. Some employees shouldn't work with children. "And Rosalie took Maisie away?" "Yes. One night 4 years ago, she took 3 children. She said she was going to find real families for them, far away from that terrible place." Teddy felt a mixture of relief and urgency. He finally had a concrete clue about Maisie's past. "Do you know where I can find Rosalie?" "I don't know. After she reported the orphanage, she disappeared. changed her name, changed her city. She was afraid of retaliation. Meanwhile, Violet had discreetly hired Jules Sterling, a 55-year-old, a private investigator known for his efficiency and lack of scruples. The medium-height man with a grey mustache had specialized in delicate cases involving wealthy families. "I need you to find out everything about this girl's past," Violet said in her elegant office. "Where she came from, if she has family, anything I can use to convince my brother-in-law to stop this obsession." "I understand perfectly, Mrs. Thornton. I'll start by investigating the records of the old orphanage and the cases of missing children in the region." Jules was meticulous in his work. In 2 weeks, he had uncovered disturbing information. He arrived at Violet's house on a rainy afternoon with a folder full of documents. "I found something interesting," he said, spreading photos and papers. On the living room table, 4 years ago, there was a fire in the Hope Gardens neighborhood in the neighboring city of Port Jervis. Several families lost their homes, and in the confusion that followed, some children ended up disappearing. Violet examined the photos of the fire. "And you think the girl—" "It's possible. And there's more. I managed to locate a woman named Hope Sullivan, 67 years old, who lives in a simple little house on the outskirts of Port Jervis. She lost her granddaughter in the fire and never stopped looking." "Her granddaughter?" Jules showed an old, faded photo. It was a small child, with brown hair and big eyes. The resemblance to Maisie was striking. The granddaughter's name was Maisie Sullivan, 4 years old at the time of the fire. Violet felt a mixture of triumph and apprehension. She finally had something concrete to use against Teddy's obsession, but something in the woman's expression in the photo disturbed her. "Did you talk to this Hope?" "Not yet. I wanted your authorization first. But Mrs. Thornton, there's something you need to know. I did some research on the family situation. Hope Sullivan has mental health problems, a history of severe depression. She may have legal rights over the girl, but she may not be able to care for her properly." That night, Violet couldn't sleep. Jules's discovery opened up possibilities she hadn't considered. If Hope really was Maisie's grandmother, that would solve the problem once and for all. But it could also create new problems if the woman wasn't suitable to care for the child. Meanwhile, Teddy had finally gotten a lead on Rosalie through a former social worker colleague. The woman now lived in Saratoga Springs, using the name Rosalie Oliver and working as a nurse's aide. The drive to Saratoga Springs took 3 hours, and Teddy was nervous when he rang the doorbell of a simple house on a quiet street. The woman who answered the door was 42 years old, her black hair pulled back in a ponytail and tired eyes that filled with fear when he introduced himself. "You're from the orphanage?" asked Rosalie, her voice trembling. "No, I came to talk about Maisie." Rosalie's face paled. "Maisie? Where is she? Is she okay?" "She's with me. I'm taking care of her." Rosalie invited him in, and for the next 2 hours, Teddy heard a story that left him horrified and amazed at the same time. "I couldn't watch those children suffer anymore," Rosalie explained, serving coffee in a simple porcelain cup. "Maisie was special, smarter than any child I had ever met, but she was withering away in that place." "How did she get to the orphanage?" "Her grandmother brought her when she was 2 years old. Hope Sullivan. The woman was going through serious problems, depression, financial difficulties. She said she couldn't take care of her granddaughter anymore." "And you took her out of there?" "Me and 2 other employees took 3 children one night. We were afraid that something worse would happen. I left Maisie with a family I knew here in Saratoga Springs, but—" Rosalie paused, tears beginning to fall. 6 months later, the family moved overseas and couldn't take her. I was being investigated because of the orphanage complaint. I was afraid of being arrested. I ended up leaving her with an acquaintance in Willow Creek." Who was this acquaintance? A woman named Crystal Sanders. She promised to take good care of Maisie, but then I lost contact. I tried to look for her several times, but... Teddy felt a chill. Crystal Sanders? Reddish hair, about 40 years old? Do you know her? I know her by sight. She has problems with alcohol, and I've never seen her with any children. Rosalie's face contorted in pain. My God, what have I done? I tried to save that girl and ended up putting her in an even worse situation. Rosalie, I need you to tell me everything about Maisie's grandmother, Hope Sullivan. Hope loved her granddaughter, but she wasn't mentally well. After her son-in-law and daughter died in an accident, she went into a deep depression. She started having psychotic episodes, seeing things that didn't exist. She thought she was being persecuted. And she gave Maisie to the orphanage because of that? Yes. But she always said she would come back to get her when she got better, but she never fully recovered. Teddy drove back to Willow Creek with a turbulent mind. He now knew that Maisie had a living grandmother, but that this grandmother might not be able to care for her, and worse, Violet and her investigator would probably discover this information soon. When he got home that night, he found Maisie awake, sitting on the windowsill of the apartment looking at the stars. Couldn't sleep, little one. I had that dream again, with Mama Rose and another lady. A lady who cried a lot and said she loved me. Teddy sat down next to her, his heart aching. What did this lady look like? She had grey hair and sad eyes. She always said I was her little star and that one day she would come get me. At that moment, Teddy understood that he was facing an impossible choice. He could keep Maisie away from her real family, knowing that the girl had a grandmother who loved her but who might not be able to care for her adequately. Or he could look for this grandmother and risk losing the child who had become the light of his life. What he didn't know was that this decision would be taken out of his hands, as Violet was already planning her next move. The tension exploded. On Monday morning, when Violet appeared at Teddy's store, accompanied by a small, fragile woman, with grey hair and eyes red from crying. Hope Sullivan held an old photo against her chest, trembling visibly as she watched Maisie play with some wooden blocks in the corner of the room. "Teddy," said Violet with a triumphant tone that he knew well, "I present to you Mrs. Hope Sullivan, Maisie's grandmother." Teddy's world collapsed at that moment. He watched as Maisie raised her eyes and froze upon seeing the woman. Slowly, the girl approached, her steps hesitant but directed. "Grandma Hope?" she whispered in a voice so low that only the silence of the room allowed everyone to hear. Hope let out a muffled cry and knelt down, opening her arms. "My little star! My little star!" Maisie ran into her grandmother's arms, but Teddy noticed that there was confusion in her eyes. The child remembered, but the memories were fragmented, mixed with traumas that she still couldn't fully process. "You disappeared." "Grandma, I looked for you," said Maisie, tears beginning to stream down her cheeks. "I know, my love. Grandma got sick, but now she's better. Now I've come to get you forever." Teddy watched the scene with a broken heart. He saw the genuine love between the two, but he also perceived Hope's fragility, the way her hands trembled, how her eyes seemed lost when they weren't focused on Maisie. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said gently, "I need to talk to you in private." Violet interjected immediately. "There's nothing to talk about, Teddy. This child has family, real family." "Violet, please," replied Teddy, struggling to stay calm. "It's a delicate situation that needs to be handled with care." Hope looked at Teddy with an expression of gratitude mixed with distrust. "Did you take good care of my granddaughter?" "I took care of her with all the love I have," he replied sincerely. "Then you understand that a child needs to be with her family." Hope's words were logical, but Teddy perceived the instability behind them. During the conversation that followed, it became clear that the woman had undergone years of psychiatric treatment, was still taking heavy medication, and lived alone, in a small house without adequate conditions for a child. "Mrs. Sullivan," said Teddy carefully, "I'd like to propose something. How about Maisie stays with me during the week to continue her studies and spends the weekends with you? That way she would have the best of both worlds." Violet exploded. "That's absurd. The child has to stay with her family." But Hope reflected on the proposal. During those few hours in the store, she had observed how Maisie was healthy, well-dressed and polite. She also saw how the girl looked at Teddy with affection and trust. I don't know if I can take care of her alone every day," she admitted. Finally, her voice broken by emotion. "I still have difficult days when I can't even take care of myself." Jules, who had remained silent observing, finally spoke. "With all due respect, but this situation needs to be resolved legally. The child has a grandmother who has been looking for her for years. Informal arrangements won't work." It was then that Rosalie appeared at the store door, breathless and desperate. She had driven 4 hours from Saratoga Springs after receiving Teddy's phone call. "Hope!" she cried upon seeing the woman. "Thank God you're okay!" The two women hugged, crying, while Maisie watched confused. Rosalie then explained the whole truth, how she had taken Maisie from the orphanage, the mistakes she had made trying to protect her, and how she had ended up on the streets until she was found by Teddy. "Hope," said Rosalie, holding her friends, "and you know you love Maisie more than anything, but you also know that you're not in a condition to take care of her alone. And this man," she looked at Teddy, "this man saved her when I failed." The conversation that followed was painful and revealing. Hope told about the years of mourning after losing her daughter and son-in-law, about how depression had consumed her ability to care for Maisie, about the despair that led her to leave her granddaughter at the orphanage, thinking it would be best for her. "I never stopped looking," she sobbed, "but I didn't know where to start. When I found out she was alive and well cared for..." Teddy knelt down in front of Hope, taking her trembling hands in his. "Mrs. Sullivan, I love this girl as if she were my own daughter, but I understand that you are her grandmother, that you have rights over her. What I propose is not to take possession of Maisie, but to create a family for her, a family where she has the love of her grandmother and also the stability she needs to grow and study." Maisie, who had been quiet throughout the entire conversation, finally spoke in her clear, decisive voice. "I want to stay with Daddy Teddy, and I also want to visit Grandma Hope. Why can't I have both?" The simplicity of the childish question silenced all the adults present. Violet tried to protest once more, but Marcel, who had arrived to support his wife, surprised everyone. "Violet, that's enough," he said firmly. "Look at this child. Look how well cared for, happy and healthy she is. And look at this grandmother who loves her but who clearly needs help. My brother is offering the best possible solution." "But Marcel..." "No, Violet, Teddy is right. And if we can't accept that, we're going to lose him too." The most surprising revelation came when Hope, in a moment of emotional clarity, made a confession that changed everything. "Teddy," she said, "there's something I need to tell you. When I approached your company 5 years ago to ask for financial help to renovate my house, you helped me. You gave me money out of your own pocket, without knowing me, just because I said I had a granddaughter to take care of." Teddy frowned, trying to remember. You don't remember because you helped so many people, but I never forgot. You already saved my family once, even without knowing it, and now you saved my granddaughter when I couldn't." Emotion overcame everyone. Rosalie cried with relief. Hope held Teddy's hand with gratitude, and Maisie snuggled between the two adults she loved most in the world. "Then, it's decided," said Hope, her voice gaining a strength she hadn't shown for hours. "Maisie will live with Daddy Teddy, But I want to be part of her life. I want to see her grow, study, and become the intelligent woman I know she will be." Teddy felt tears stream down his face. "Mrs. Sullivan, you will always be welcome in our home. Maisie needs to know her history, her real family, and I'm going to get better," promised Hope, determination shining in her eyes. "I'm going to get proper treatment. I'm going to fix up my house. I'm going to be the grandmother she deserves." 6 months later, life had reorganized in a way that no one could have foreseen. Maisie was officially enrolled in the best private school in town, where she stood out as the brightest student in her class. Every weekend, she visited Hope, who had moved to a small but comfortable house near the city, where the two tended a garden full of flowers, and Hope told stories about Maisie's parents. Teddy had discovered that true wealth was not in the businesses he had built, but in the ability to transform lives through unconditional love. Marcel and Violet, initially resistant, had surrendered to Maisie's charm and now treated her like a true niece. Rosalie visited regularly, always bringing gifts and stories of other children she had helped over the years. She had become a bridge between Maisie's past and present, helping the girl understand her story without being traumatized by it. And Maisie? At 5 years old, she was a radiant child who knew she was loved by many different people, each contributing uniquely to her happiness. She still drew birds, but now they didn't represent the desire to escape. They represented the freedom of a child who had finally found her place in the world. One Sunday afternoon, while Maisie was playing in the garden of Hope's house, the grandmother approached Teddy. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For teaching me that loving someone sometimes means sharing that love. For showing me that a family can take many different forms." Teddy smiled, watching Maisie chase a butterfly. "I think she's the one who taught us that." And so, a 4-year-old girl who began her journey being pushed away from a school door managed, through her own innocence and determination, to unite people who seemed destined for conflict, creating a family based not on blood or law, but on true love and mutual sacrifice. Maisie's story became a legend in Willow Creek, not as a fairy tale, but as proof that sometimes the happiest endings are those that no one could have imagined from the beginning. If you liked this wonderful story, please comment. Your opinion is very important, and if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.